Hello, good morning, everybody. It's 10 o'clock, so we are ready to start for the second day of MyAcademicID. I hope everybody's doing well, and thank you again for those that are joining for the second day. Today, we hope to give you a little bit of insight on how things are being deployed at the campus level. And we will start with Miro Milinovic, who is Assistant Director at the University Computing Center of Zagreb, CERCE. And Miro is also leading the Croatian Higher Education Federation. Miro is in any case a special case because the way how Croatia is organized makes things maybe easier, at least for this specific use case. Then we will continue with Jeroen van Lent, who is an IT project officer at European University Foundation. And before this, he had very much his hand in the dough as the head of IT at the Erasmus Student Network. And then we put some people that are very much representing the university perspective. You see a number of universities being represented there. Remember that the webinar will be recorded. The participants cannot access audio or video. However, as yesterday, we will be using the Q&A session for this. But I think it's enough for me talking. So if Miro, I see Miro ready. So I'm happy to hand the video to you.
Thanks. Good morning. Let me see if I can share my screen presentation.
You can share a screen that looks very colorful, but it's not probably what you want to share. Okay.
Just a second. Okay. Okay, I presume you now see my slides. Are you able to see my slides, please? Can you confirm?
Yes, we can see your slide very well. Okay. We don't see your face because it turned into a rainbow colors, but other than that, the slides.
Okay, so I think I can start. And so very good morning to everyone. I will really present how we have done the MyAcademicID, how we deployed European Student Identifier in Croatia. So first, allow me to say a few words about the CERCE. The full name is University of Zagreb University Computing Center, and we were established almost 50 years ago. 1971 was the year, as the main computing center to serve the whole research and higher education system in Croatia. So unlike the name says, we are not University of Zagreb unique service. We serve the whole country. And today we are the main computing center and the principal architect of a lot of infrastructure that has been built in Croatia. We do provide roughly 50 different services through our 2 data centers, and those services are actually covering a whole spectrum from the lower layers and network service up to the applications, information systems, some of them on the national level, and that includes the competence centers, training and support for the end users, as well as the other institutions and admins in Croatia. And due to some of our experience, I will explain a bit later, we were invited by the MyAcademicID project coordinators, and thanks for that, as a partner, and we joined the project in 2020. So we are a bit like a latecomer to the project. What is specific, what is interesting to say before I explain gory details about the implementation? We run several national services, which are probably important or interesting in the case of MyAcademicID. The first one, of course, is the Identity Federation. We call it AAI at EduHR. Yeah, it's not an easy name to pronounce. Bad decision years ago. It covers really the whole higher education and research community. When I say whole, I really mean it. We have something like 240 IDPs, which is more or less 100% of the institutions registered by the responsible Ministry of Science and Education as the institutions in the system or ecosystem of higher education and research. So we do think that there are e-identities for each and every student and staff. If somebody doesn't have it, it means that he is reluctant and doesn't want to have it. So let it be. The system includes the school with the help of Croatian Academic and Research Network CARNET. And we are proud to confirm that we are connected to EduGain and ADAS through the national node, which is in Croatia called NIAS. When I say connected to EduGain, this means that we practice the opt-out principle. All our IDPs are connected immediately as they are an IDP in our federation. So they have to ask to opt out, and nobody asked to opt out until now. One more technical addition to this AI EduHR is the hub and spoke federation with a central login. So we are in a position to do some things easier and faster than federations which have a mesh architecture in which IDPs have a more responsibilities, but also more freedom to act independently. The second thing I want to mention is that we have a national information system of student records and cards. The shortcut in Croatian is ISSP and ISAK, which actually keeps the basic student record for all the students and information about the issued student card. This is plastic only at this moment. But the important thing to know is that the student card is treated as official document. This means that there are some bylaws signed by the Minister of Science and Education, and you can't actually change the card very easy, but on the other hand, it is used as identification document in higher education and research community in Croatia. A single one. Basis for that is the unique student identifier. And now you see one thing that is probably important and interesting for this project. So we have something called JMBG, Jedinstveni matični broj akademskog građana. This is the whole world in Croatian language. And this one is being given by the central system to a person when he or she enters the academic community, the higher education, and is kept uniquely until you go out. Even if you decide to come back, we will, or the system will discover that you already have JMBG and you will get it back. So as you see, we have a unique student identifier at the level of the country. And this system is actually responsible for keeping it unique. The third one on this list is student management system. It's also a national service, although it's not mandatory like the previous one, ISSP, but at this moment it serves almost over 90% of the higher education institutions. It is 110 plus of the institutions, and I'd like to underline all the big one universities and faculties are in it. It holds the data about institutions, courses, student records, so it holds everything that is actually needed to efficiently exchange information among information systems regarding the student mobility. So this is the scenery. This is actually the systems which allowed us to think about how to efficiently deploy European student identifier. And the answer was obvious. As you have learned yesterday from Christos, and Leif actually, the ESI as a unique student identifier has a format which allows to explain, to express it as a country level identifier, as seen on the slide. So we said, okay, we can transform YIMBAG into ESI, and that's the way what we have. That's what we have done. So Croatian unique student identifier by simply changing the format or adding it into the ESI format has been transformed, and now we have ESI as shown on the slide. How does it work? Actually, simply. As you could see on this picture, YIMBAG is actually fed into the institution directories, into the IDPs, those responsible for user-student authentication. That is being done automatically. The institutions which are not using the ISO system can do it via their own application via ISSP system. So there is a means, and for some institutions that's already for big part of the institutions that is already a practice, that this identifier is being fed into the IDP's directories. So when a student actually authenticates to OLA or Erasmus without a paper service, or whatever will become a European student services infrastructure in the future, throughout our central system, YIMBAG and attributes are being actually consolidated and transferred into the ESI and attributes and sent to the appropriate service. So here we actually also make use of the fact that we are hub and spoke federation with central login, so we can transform the attributes on the fly during the authentication and authorization process once a student wants to access, for instance, open learning agreement service on the net. Thus, we had to do very little changes in the current system. We had to change a bit central services, inform the institutions how to do and what to check, and it almost worked. If this picture is a bit of confusing to some of you, let me show it on the picture which has been presented yesterday again by Christos. So at this moment, our identity providers are part of the educate world. And once a user authenticates, as presented in the picture, ESI is being sent with other attributes like name, affiliation, and email. And we use YIMBAG, or we fed YIMBAG into the ESI format. We send it, transform it to become an ESI. And of course, due to the fact that we are connected to the Croatian ADAS node, there is also a possibility to make use of the ADAS authentication. In addition to that, what we plan and see as a future work is to be able to pre-provision some information from the ESSP, or mostly from the ISU system, student management system, to the suite of European student services, starting with the Erasmus without the paper, OLA, and so on and so on. And to conclude my short presentation, yes, it works. So the current status is that our federation releases all the needed attributes, and students can at this moment use OLA and other services as they will come over time. The higher institutions leverage ISU or can use ESSP to populate YIMBAG as ESI, to populate European Student Identifier. And students can even check. We have a service called MyID. So the students can check if the ESI is populated. So they can check if their directory has that appropriate number. So there is a certainty, it's certain that once they access OLA, the ESI will be sent out. So even the students can check. But of course, this is just the beginning. I think it's a nice result for the project, and we've made the leverage of the architecture of the IT support that we have here in Croatia. But this is really the beginning. We still have a long tail of the system, so we'll still have to help some institutions to provision YMBAG, or better to say, to deploy ESI. There are some special cases still. We do need to plan and execute the data transfer from the ISMU, from the student management system, to what is called these days EDSSI, European Digital Student Services Infrastructure. That means OLA and other services. And last but not the least, disseminate. We discovered that although being a small country and 4 million people and probably not more than 1 million in the whole education system, starting from kindergartens up to the professors in the academy, it's still the case that some people didn't hear about it. And we are working with the ministry, with the universities, even with the National Agency for EU programs, to disseminate information and let people know about the not only results of the MyAcademicID project, but also about the future services that are digitizing the mobility process. Saying that, if you want to learn more about what we did and what we plan to do, please write to my aid@sce.hr. And thank you for your attention.
Miro, thank you so much about this. Maybe the presentation was technical for some people, but I think the whole purpose of this was really to show that all this works and can be done in practice. Before we hand the screen and microphone to Jeroen, I have maybe a question, because this looks, I mean, in Croatia, looks like the ideal place to be, where everything is organized, all institutions are connected, etc. What will be your suggestion, recommendations for places where the situation is a bit more fragmented? If you have anything that you think could be useful.
I mean, yes, it can. If I go back to this picture, I mean, it's quite clear that if you don't have a student management systems, you will have issues and problems. What we think is what was the good result is that we managed to couple student management system with the directory of an institution. So an IDP gets attributes from the authoritative resource, and after that, it's just a proper handling of attributes and providing proper formats to the outer world. Yes, we made use of our central service here, but still the same, I would say, mechanism could be applied to an individual university, IDP. That would be my message. So I think it's the same wherever you go.
Yeah, no, but this is why I wanted to also look a little bit at the higher picture. But even if you are not really in the panel, but you will be there to take questions. So if people have questions, Miro will be here to answer. And now, Jeroen, sorry for keeping you waiting. So the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to see what you have to show.
Thank you very much, Richa. I hope you can hear me well, right? Everything okay? Perfect. I'm also going to share the screen, but I think as the first presenter of this conference, I'm not going to share a presentation because I'm going to show you around some of the tools that we have. I'm going to give you an overview of everything that we have implemented and hopefully provide some hands-on experiences, what it means to log in as a student into the services and what kind of mechanisms we can use. So I hope you can see the screen as well, right? Little confirmation before I start. Very good. So let's start by firing up a browser. By the way, everything I'm going to do is probably something that you can also do yourself if you want to give it a try. I think it's highly recommended to go through the process yourself to see what students are going through, to see what everyone is experiencing while we are using these tools. So let's go to the tool that we've mentioned quite some times, the online learning agreement, recently renewed and relaunched, and fully leveraging the MyAcademicID authentication solution as of now. So if we want to start filling in learning agreements, it's of course important for us to log in and to get the understanding of who the student is and what the student, from which university the student comes. So if we click the login button, right now we're getting two options here, to log in with Google or to log in with the academic credentials. Of course, we're here to look at the academic credentials, not so much at Google. So we're going there. And right away, you see we're being sent to the MyAcademicID authentication proxy that effectively presents us with three options to log in. So if we look at the screen, the first option that we have there is a search bar in which we can search the institution that we want to use to log in. So just to give you an example, you can start typing, for example, Amsterdam, and you can see all the institutions in Amsterdam that support logging in. We can do the same in Brussels, and we see all the universities that support logging in. In my case, I'm going to show you how we log in using the credentials that I have within KTH in Sweden. It's a university in Stockholm. So we're going to proceed by clicking the button. Later on, we'll look at the other options that we have here for logging in. So there's, as I said, there's three options. There's logging in using the university credentials that we have. There's logging in using AIDAS, and there's logging in using Google. So let's start off by logging in using the academic credentials as I told you. So I'm going to click this button. And you see right away, we are sent to this nice login page from KTH. Let's switch it to English so you have an idea what I'm doing. And I'm simply logging in with my credentials that I have already. This page looks familiar for me because I was a student at KTH. So this is the page that you will see, that the students will see, that comes directly from your institution, something that they are familiar with and something they have probably used to log into countless times to access other services. And before clicking login now, I would like to give an overview of what usually happens. So usually when we log in for the first time, what is happening is that the university is giving us a screen asking, are you sure that you want to release your name, your surname, and your email to the MyAcademicID authentication solution to be passed on to the online learning agreement. In my case, I already did that, of course. So a second time or a third time or a fourth time logging in, this question won't be popped anymore. So as you see, now I can click login. I will not being asked for the consent because I've already given it. And right away, I'm logged in to the learning agreement. I'm clicking the account, you see my name is there, I'm logged in. And that's effectively everything that we need to do to authenticate. That's how easy it is. To show you this, because I was explaining a couple of things along the way, I'm going to show you this once again without the explanation, so you can see how low effort and easy, simple this thing is. We simply type in the institution, we log in, and right away we are in the application of the online learning agreement, logged into in our account, ready to start creating learning agreements. So that's as simple as it can be. Now, I promised you we would be looking at some of the other solutions as well that are there within the authentication proxy. So let's have a look. We are going to log in again and have a closer look at some of the other options that are there. As some of you are aware, the Google option, we have announced this many times, is something that's there temporary, something to make sure that you're able to authenticate, that your students are able to authenticate, even if you're not fully connected to the EduGain Identity Federation, to all the technical diagrams that were explained before. So right now there's still the Google solution that will later be removed. But then there's also the EIDAS, which allows us to log in using our citizen credentials that we have in our countries. So I've already linked myself my ID card in this nice card reader. Some of you might be familiar with in your countries, to log in using my Belgium identity that I have here with me. So let's try that out as well. We're going to log in using EIDAS. Let's switch this to English so we can understand it. Right now, these are the countries to be chosen from within the EIDAS login. But of course, there's others being added on a rolling basis. So we are going to go for Belgium. And it's going to show me the page that is common for Belgium to log in. So when I log into government services, when I log into the tax agency, for example, this is the exact same screen that I see. So also for me, this is super familiar to log in with. And I'm going to log in using the card reader that I just showed you. My card is in there. So basically it verifies these things as a standard procedure. And I'm being asked to authenticate, to enter my PIN code. And here you see I'm being asked to share these attributes, to share my name, and these kind of things with the application that is asking to have them. So I'm going to allow it for now. And based on that, we need to have a little bit of patience. We are redirected back to the online learning agreement. And also here, if I go to my account, you will see I'm logged in with my user ready to edit learning agreements. So this is how quickly this can go as well using your citizen credentials. Now, I've only shown you the online learning agreement, but of course the power of all of this is that we can do this on different tools as well. So let's look at another application that we have rolled this out on the PhD Hub. We are also able to log in using MyAcademicID, which brings me to the same page. I hope we're all familiar with now. I'm going to log in using my KTH credentials. And also here, after a little bit of patience, we are logged in right away, and you can see the account is there, the email is there, the properties are there, which allows then the application to do further things, right? To understand who I am and so on. This is going to be rolled out to more services. Most notably, the Erasmus Plus app is something that will come very soon. We're currently in a testing phase, and look out for that to see that in the future, and more services to come. So that's a little bit the overview of what we can do, what we have here today. I hope this was useful, and back to you, Lice.
Well, Jeroen, I think this was great. Actually, first of all, I was feeling very nervous because live demo, there is always something that goes wrong. And yesterday, even Google crashed, which is really a rare event. So today, everything seems to work. So thank you for being so brave and for the very clear presentation. I think this has really conveyed a clear message why we have MyAcademicID. There are a number of questions here on the chat. Some are specific, as in, why can't I connect? Why my students cannot connect from this university? Why they cannot connect? So we can look at that, but right now, those are very specific questions. So I will put my email address so we can follow up offline to check why a university cannot connect. Actually, as you can see in the chat, Marika said, great presentation. Finally, I get to what all this is about. So this is very good to hear. Then there are more questions about what if our institution is not finding the login search? And this is maybe something you want to elaborate a bit more. I can find the university, but yeah, and what if somebody works for both universities?
You want me to answer this, Lice?
If you want, or otherwise there are other colleagues here that can answer.
I can make an attempt. I can make a start. Maybe you can add to it. But basically, the list of institutions is there from the institutions that are connected to the Edugain Identity Federation, so to the national research and education communities. So if you're not there, one of the first steps would definitely be to reach out to your national research and education community and see what they can do to help you. I'm sure we're also very happy to put you in touch with them to make sure that you end up on that list. And then there's various reasons why you may not be, or why you may not be in the list, but I'm sure there's many of them that can be solved along the way. You also asked the question, what happens if someone has an account in both institutions, which I think is a good question, or in two institutions. And in this case, it's simply a choice for now, which one to log into. But I'm sure that some of the colleagues might be able to provide some more details in what is technically happening there.
Maybe Christos wants to say something, I don't know.
Yes, hello. This is what we talked about a bit yesterday about the identity linking, and the student will have a choice to either link accounts from different universities, also with their citizen EID, if they wish to do so, or not. I mean, this is a decision that the student can take. So if they go to have discrete accounts, one from University X and one from University Z, they can, and they can actually fill the forms with different accounts, or they can link these accounts together and effectively be able to access and have the same access to the data of the service behind them as if they logged in with either of them. So this is a capability that we have introduced on the MyAcademicID platform from the very beginning, and this is something that actually we will be working much more in the EDCI context to give more possibilities from now until basically summer of 2021.
Actually, as both of you have the video on, which is good, because there is also a question, maybe if you want to elaborate more on the link between EIDAS and the OLA, how is this happening? Maybe Jeroen, if I don't know, or if we want to put some slide to show, or Christos, up to you guys.
Again, this is based on the capability to link identities. So what Jeroen has done is he has linked his KTH academic identity with academic attributes with his EIDAS EID. So now, regardless the authentication method used, either at KTH or with his national EID, the same attributes, academic attributes, are passed to the service, and he's logged in. This is basically what happens behind the scene.
Right. So, and I'm trying to go through the questions. Some of our students are experiencing troubles when they try to access the OLA. The first part is smooth. They click on the link, log in through our single sign-on. They are transferred to WAFE, that's the Danish National Identity Federation. When they are returned to MyAcademicID, they are told that they need to register. Oh, I see what they mean. Chris, I think this one is for you, that they need to register, and in order to do that, yes, they will receive an email, but they never receive it.
So this is very interesting. I can bet, I don't know where this the person who asked is from, but I can bet he's from University of Copenhagen, or she is, because we did have a major problem with the University of Copenhagen. So as part of this process, we do require to verify the email address of the student, because this is the only way that we and the services can communicate with the student. Now, this has worked great in the vast majority of the higher education institutions, but we did have some issues with a few. So, for example, with a university from Latvia, it seems that the email addresses were not correct. They were saying, so it was actually very good, and we were trying to verify the email addresses. From University of Copenhagen, though, it was something, and sorry to put this on the spot, but this is very interesting. So they have a system there in order to prevent spam going to the email addresses of the students. And this interesting anti-spam system, effectively what it does, it says whenever you send a new email to a student, it sends you an email back and says, you know what, this is the first time you're trying to contact the student. Please ask for permission to the student to allow you to send email to them. And Of course, this was happening to a vast number of students coming from that university. So last week, we were trying to reach out to the IT support team of University of Copenhagen. We finally managed to do it on Friday to get in touch with them, because also the contact was via email with that team. So we found a phone number. And on Monday morning, we got an email that actually they had whitelisted our service so that we can send emails to the students. And they have also whitelisted all the emails that had piled up during the last week. These are things that do happen in production. We cannot foresee how each university has set up their mail system. But we do have a team behind the scenes who is working with all universities trying to sort these things out. We have been thinking whether we should remove the requirement for validating email addresses, but now it has served a good purpose, and probably we will keep it, because sometimes we do see that the email addresses that the institutions are sending are not always correct. And perhaps let me say also the following: another capability that we rolled out yesterday was that if the student, for whatever reason, mistypes even their email address, now they can go back to their application and fix it. So we are taking into account also these issues. This has happened, based on my stats, to 8 universities out of the 530 something that I mentioned yesterday. So it's a very low number, but we do understand the impact, and we do try to work with the people, the IT support of these universities, to resolve them as soon as possible. I hope I answered the question.
I think you did, but I suggest that I will type to Line to exchange email addresses so we can follow up more and see if there is a need for that, as it's a very specific question. Problem also. Sorry for that. So there is another question that is still about EADAS login, and yesterday Christos mentioned attributes that will need to be shared from March onwards. Will those attributes be shared via EADAS login as well? So maybe some more clarification on the attributes, how this works when people use EADAS.
So first of all, these attributes are not available on the national ID, right? This is the citizen ID. It doesn't have baked in the academic attributes. This is why we do the linking with the academic identity, the academic digital persona of the student. So the academic attributes will be coming always from the institution where the student is studying, and we'll be linking to that the citizen ID so that they can use both in a seamless way.
Okay. Yeah, I suggest that we put an email address for those that have specific questions about why can't I log in via my university, because we cannot really do this now. Then are all these tools, the OLA, PHP Hub, Erasmus app, mandatory for European educational institutions? What about governance? So there are multiple questions here. What about the governance of the HOLA, PHP Hub? How are they defined? Who are the national authorities to be contacted? And the OLA and the PHP Hub content personalized, whether the personalization of the content there is linked to the authentication. So there are different things there. So I see an opportunity for many people, particularly on the governance. I think that's really for you UF guys.
Maybe I can make a start, and maybe some of my colleagues can jump in if they feel needed. So all these tools are not mandatory to use, but I can say they're great. So we highly recommend you to use them. There are some new things within the new Erasmus program that it is required for you to use an online learning agreement, so that you have to exchange learning agreements in a digital form. But it is not possible to use, or it's not required, mandatory, to use the online learning agreement that I just showed you. The governance of this, we are working very closely with the European Commission to provide all these services. These are initiatives that come from the universities So they are maintained by different universities. To name you an example, the online learning agreement is something that's currently maintained and run by the Aristotle University in Thessaloniki. So there's different countries, different institutions involved. But in all of that, we are, of course, working very closely with the European Commission to make sure that everything is aligned. And then to briefly touch upon the last question that's there, whether the services are personalized, the answer is yes. This is the most important thing of having this authentication solution, that we know from which institution a student comes. This means we're able to pre-fill information, we're able to filter information. When we look at use cases surrounding the Erasmus app, we're able to instantly set the location to the right city and these sorts of things. So all the tools are now customized up to a basic level, because we do not get all the attributes from everywhere. So we're still building sort of the amount of information that we receive. But down the road, this is the clear use case. This is the clear added value that we can start adding more personalization, more and more personalization to these services, and make sure that we bypass the student manually entering certain information that we can also get in an automated manner. I don't know if my colleagues have something to add to this.
Any other comment to this specific question? Or these questions, I should say. Leif, did you want to say something?
No, I just wanted to say that it was actually very clear. I thought from.
Yeah. Let's say. Okay. Can the student log in over MyAcademicID use their existing login at the university? Yes, that
is the whole point.
That's the whole point, indeed. Not to create accounts, new accounts, yet other accounts for each service. So let's say, yeah, there are specific questions which it's very difficult to answer for us on the spot. Is it possible to use Offer 365 as an identity provider? Yes, of course it is. Many universities are using commercial providers to manage their IDPs, and it's what information you store into the IDP, how you configure Office 365, or for that matter, any other IDP to release what attributes. So, but Christos,
There are already many higher education institutions which have decided to outsource the management of their identity provider to Office 365, and they can centrally log in. That's the answer.
Yeah. Yes, and then something about Google login. As far as the login with Google is concerned, is it a temporary option or?
So yes, I touched upon this briefly when I was going through it. The challenge that we currently have is that we are in a transition phase, right? So we're getting ready to do everything using MyAcademicID. And in order to make sure that nobody is left out for the moment, we have enabled certain other options for authentication. But as you can imagine, logging in using Google doesn't know anything about the status of the student, doesn't know a ESI, doesn't know a student status, doesn't know the city where someone is from. So of course, that information we don't get when someone is logging in using Google. Right now, we're going out of our way, as Christos already explained, to make sure that we sort of complement that information. We add some manual validation, we add some manual steps to it. But over time, once the transition is completed, we aim to have everyone connected using MyAcademicID. And at that point, we'll discontinue the Google login and make sure that everyone can log in using their academic credentials. So we get the right information and we can use that within the applications to automatically trigger certain behaviors and certain functionalities.
Right, this was also answered. Yeah, maybe something more about the OLA. So who can effectively log into that? Is this only for students, administrators? So is the federated login enabled for everybody?
So right now, we just rolled it out on a couple of applications. So I showed you two of them. The Erasmus app is the third one coming. So there's the applications where you can currently try it out. To answer your question, with an administrator account, you can probably log into the online learning agreement just fine. The only thing is that the next step will then be to create a learning agreement. So I'm not sure how useful this is for administrators as such, beyond the purpose of trying out how the login works, right? I would recommend everyone to go through that process so we all understand what students go through. Of course, we are working to roll out this solution for broader usage. So we're also looking on how we can roll this out into different places where administrators may have more use in logging in using their credentials than the online learning agreement. But for now, it should, I don't think many institutions distinguish there in terms of logging in. So you should be able to log in using your credentials from the university into the OLA. The challenge is then that you cannot do much within the OLA as such, aside from creating your own learning agreement.
Yes, and then Andreas makes a comment. So basically, MyAcademicID is a bridge technology or a bridge protocol to bridge between university login and external services. And this is indeed what it is, and even more to bridge with the EIDAS compliant identities. Yeah, Google connection is very important and it works. We need time for our institution to connect to MyAcademicID, Muriel is asking, which I think actually is commenting, but I think the question is probably we will need to see how ready universities are before plugging out Google. And this is something that, of course, will be taken into account.
Can I make a comment here, Licia, just also a clarification perhaps? I know in the same way that many institutions have outsourced the operation of their identity provider to Office 365, they also have done it with Google for Education. And this is and will be supported. I mean, these are part of the federation. The discussion that is ongoing right now is basically to disable the Google logins with users who have individual accounts, which are not associated with any institution at all, because there we don't have any information about the user in relation to his or her academic studies.
Yeah, and maybe we should clarify a bit more because Paolo is asking the association between national IDs and student IDs is something that is implemented by each universities on their own systems or not?
This is a very good question, and
yes.
Actually this is forward-looking. So right now on the MyAcademicID platform, we are able to link these identities together. The higher education institutions don't have to do anything. Having said this, though, let's look a bit forward to the future. We do envision a future actually very soon where students will be able to enroll at the universities with their national EID, which means that the university will have information about the national EID of the person. When this happens, then actually the student will be able to log in directly with the national ID from the university and transfer the academic address to. MyAcademicID is working also towards this direction because the connection, the gateway we have with EIDAS, which is now focused on the MyAcademicID and student mobility experience. We are in discussions with the member states and the EIDAS Cooperation Network to broaden its usage so that actually universities can use it in the enrollment process of new students. So when this materializes and the circle closes, then actually the student will be able to use the national ID end-to-end. So I really appreciate it. I didn't want to mention it before because I thought that I would confuse people. It's a bit forward-looking and future-looking, but yeah, there is a bigger vision behind it, and thank you very much for this question.
All right, there is a question about the EU login, which is the credentials that you get when you log in, when you register your organization at the EC portal for grants. So in this case, I will defer then to Leif more. It wouldn't help a lot the students because there aren't so many students that have a new login account. And
Well,
again, yeah.
No, but you could argue that they would that would be an incentive for them to get the EU login account. So now I think the problem here is that an account as such, a login, the only thing you get with that is some sort of security assurance and some sort of login quality, but it doesn't help you with the process because there are no attributes that come with the EU login, right? The EU login has no scalable way of knowing who's a student in what university, even though conceptually it's possible to feed that kind of information from universities into a centralized login service like EU login. In practice, that would cost much more than for the universities to stand up identity providers on their own. You know, trust management, identity management that we build on this kind of scale is really a cost game. We're really trying to optimize for as low a cost as possible for the institutions who participate in the system. And the more you centralize login, the more it costs, it turns out. One of our old friends used to say that trust does not scale. And that's a very easy and simple way to remember that basic premise that, you know, the more you centralize identity, the more it costs. So the EU login works very well today because it's only used for grant application. It's a relatively small number of users. When we get to the millions of users, if we were to try to centralize a significant portion of that, even a small portion of that, along with the attributes required to make it go make it work for the OLA and the related services, the EU login would simply not survive that. Right? It would not work. No centralized login scheme would work. And in fact, if you look at the cost of maintaining an identity, numerous benchmarks have been done on this over the years, and it's shown that it sort of costs on the order of 50 euros a year to maintain an identity in a system. Like a simple login costs about 50 euros a year. It's not by coincidence the fact that if you buy a simple identity from Google or from Microsoft, it costs you about 50 to 60 euros per year to buy it, because it's sort of baseline production cost for them. Now, if you sort of do the math and multiply with the number of students that are in the Erasmus system, if you were to centralize even a small portion of that, the numbers become astronomical quite fast. And if we don't sort of figure out the way to push all of that complexity and cost out to the edge, right, to the institutions themselves, to a large degree, scalability of digitalization projects like this simply doesn't add up. The economics just doesn't work.
Okay, there are a lot of questions. We have to pick just a couple more because we are going on with the panel there. I'm trying to see which ones, but it's very difficult. So we would like to create OLA according with scenario 1, pre-filling the OLA with our institution data in order not to have wrong data filled in by the student, which is of course a problem. So when I think, okay, it goes down. In this case, how does it work for our students?
Yes, so that's exactly the way it works. When well, this is a little bit more into how the OLA application and the Erasmus dashboard and so on works. But effectively, the way it works is that you pre-fill, you upload the list of students that is going to go abroad. With their email. In that case, it's important to use their email address that you know they will also use for logging in. So if your institution is able to log in using MyAcademicID, you should use the email addresses that are available within your institution. And then when the student is logging in, the learning agreement is already there for them, pre-filled and ready to be completed and signed.
Yes, there are then about, so there are questions about MyAcademicID data model, what standard have been evaluated. Maybe we can type the answer in the chat and go on to the panel. before we run out of time. But this was really very good and very interesting question. So I'm glad that this came forward. Right, for the panel now, we have invited, as I said, representatives from universities. So let's start with ladies first. Fresia Perez. She works together with Leif for SUNET. Fresia is leading the development of the Swedish EIDAS node and the National Federation Sweden Connect. She has done lots of work for e-signature project. She's also responsible for the academic identity service, which is EduID, which somebody mentioned also yesterday, for which there are activities ongoing in the Netherlands, Germany, Switzerland. Then we have Sergio Storari. Sergio works for the University of Bologna. Actually, he worked a lot on a project related also to artificial intelligence. So very interesting, a fascinating topic right now. And is now working as technical manager for of the computer science lab at the Department of Engineering at the University of Ferrara. So both jobs. We'll also have Vittoriano Giralt, or Giralt, I should say, is a CEO at the University of Malaga, has been involved for a long time in student mobility related activities. And he was also, I think is not anymore, the chair of the Groningen Declaration Network. And Davide Vaghetti, who mentioned his name yesterday, and I gave away his email address yesterday, so Davide could get emails from everybody that was participating for Italian University. Davide works for IDEM, is also the service owner of EduGain, is leading the IDEM Federation. And before that, so Davide has also got some hands-on experience as technical lead at and SIS administrator at the University of Pisa. This said, let me make sure that all panelists are indeed present and we can start. So what I was thinking here was, I mean, we heard Miro, which was, you know, the perfect scenario. In one go, he managed to connect everybody. Everybody was already connected to the federation and everybody can already deploy the ESI. I wanted to go on maybe with Vittoriano and understand what is, I mean, just to be clear, the University of Malaga is not yet releasing DSI. Am I correct? You are muted? Still muted? Vittoriano, you are muted.
I'm now unmuted. Yeah, you hear me?
Great.
Yeah, great. So I was saying that I'm checking that because given the fact that the Spanish Federation is hub and spoke, I'm not 100% sure that this we are not sending it out and it's not being passed over, or that. So I have to check because we have all the infrastructure in place, so we can. I'll check and see how it is, but we are ready to send it.
So can you say a bit more about what being ready means, so that everybody can understand? Was there something that you have done before? How can somebody define to be ready? What does that mean?
Well, being ready from our point of view is that we have all the information that we have to put into the ESI. So. And we have been working with the SHAC schema for long. So we have everything in our IDM. And we can create the ESI as it's been specified by the MyAcademicID and the other projects. So, and our IDP is ready to assert the value for our students to be sent to any service that needs it. So, we are ready to provide the required information for the services to identify our students with a single number that identifies each and every single student.
So Vittoriano, when do you think you will be releasing that?
Well, we could be releasing that today, but as I said before, I have to check why we are not sending it out, basically. So if it's our IDP not asserting it and passing it on to the Red Iris side of the federation, and if not, I will check with the people in Red Iris and find out why SIR is not passing on the ESI to the services that require it. So
okay, but basically in your case this will be pretty simple step.
Yep.
If it's not already implemented.
Yeah, but it's just telling our identity provider not to filter out the values when it's going out to the federation.
Thank you. Then let me check. Let's move on to another positive story, which is Sergio Storari. Sergio, you should be able to put on the video. Yes, turn on the audio. And the reason why we asked you to be here is really to report about your experience, as your university has been one of the first universities to deploy the SI as soon as we published the information. So could you say a bit more? How do you find out about that? How easy, difficult it was?
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Did you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I will prepare 2 slides in order to explain our work. I'm Sergio Storari. I'm the manager of the Digital Identity Office of the university. We worked in the last 2 months on the implementation of MyAcademicID within our institution. And we have started with the implementation of the ESI code within our ADP. We are a member of the IDEM Federation, and also we started, first of all, analyzing the characteristics of that the ESI code should have, globally unique, persistent, not targeted. We don't have in Italy a national identifier for students, so we have to choose the second kind of implementation, the one that is a globally that is unique, globally unique within the institution, within our institution in our case. So this is I show the slide, the format, the prefix. Then we have the SHAC home organization that in our case is unibo.it. And then we have to choose one identifier that is unique. We started an analysis with our the expert of our information system, student information system. And we choose one of the identifier that we was already using in our application that is unique. It is still the same in all the kind of degree and the study course of the student within our institution. Having defined how to create to create the code, we started with the technical implementation of the ESI code in our IDP, that is Shibboleth. So we modified, thanks to the help of Davide Vaghetti and all the IDEM Federation, we modify the attribute resolver. That is the file in which you define what attribute you want to release to a service provider. We define it, and this code is computed on the fly during the authentication challenge. Then we used a version of the attribute filter that is the file configuration file that decide when you can release the attribute to the service provider that is asking the attribute. And we choose to release the attribute for the service provider in the entity category, research and scholarship, and data protection code of conduct. So we use a file that is provided by our federation. We integrated it in our environment, and and we put it in production. So it was not so complex to realize. Now we are ready to let our student to use our credential to log in into the services provided by online OLA and other application offered by the MyAcademicID project. Then we try we start another kind of analysis. We are working very hard on the implementation of the Erasmus without paper goal. We are trying to understand how for the ESI formation and EduGain can do for us for simplify the preparation, to simplify all of the administrative matters that are related to the Erasmus mobility. When the student come from another university in Bologna. Moreover, we are also trying to understand what Erasmus without paper requires to us to accomplish all the formal administrative act that are needed for mobility. So we are starting understanding this how to reach this goal, and we think that EduGain will be useful because if we can integrate EduGain in our application reserved for Erasmus student, we can allow students to use their credential to access our system. And also we can avoid some problems related to filling data by students, especially the foreign student of some nation that has that usually do a lot of mistakes when they put data in our system. So we will integrate EduGain in our services, and also we can suggest all the institution, national institution, and all the private company in Bologna that wants to provide the services and promotion, special apartment fair, and so on services to the student in mobility. We will suggest to federate with IDEM in order to allow students to make simple to access these services, also for making simple their mobility. Moreover, we are trying to understand. We will use the ESI code obtained during the login to automate the creation of all the administrative documents that Erasmus without paper will need to compute, for example, the nomination, the certificate, the date in which the student has accomplished some exam, to all the activities that the student has done during their mobility, and to make our administrative act more simple. About the technical activity related to reach this goal, we are trying to find out the best way to integrate EduGain with our Unibo authentication services. We are using a Microsoft IDP as our main identity provider. We have also our Shibboleth IDP federated with the Edugain, and we are trying to understand how it is possible to bridge in these authentication services in order to make the effort for on our application as less as possible, because we want to make things very easy also for our software developer. And also, we are also trying to understand the best way to use the ESI code to integrate this code within our information system. I think the ESI of our institution, not on mine. Okay.
Thank you, Sergio. This was very clear, and actually, I mean, it really shows a concrete case how things happen at university. And also, I believe you addressed some of the questions that were raised before in the chat about the usage of Microsoft IDPs, which you clearly show that it is possible. I take that there was already some foundation in place at the University of Bologna, but how long did it take for you to look at the specification and say, okay, I'm gonna roll this out?
Takes, I think, 10 working days to make the integration, to test it, because thanks to IDEM, we have a very good guides that helps us for integrating, for understanding how Shibboleth works. So we have a lot of aid from them, and I think that my colleague will send email to their federation, and I am sure that they will have all the support needed to integrate ESI in their federation, and also in Edugain, of course.
Thank you very much. Before we get to Davide, because there were in any case yesterday quite some questions about you, I would like to go to Fresia, because it looks now we are showing all the good cases with Miro, with Sergio, but Fresia, you are not the same as Croatia, where everything works out of the box. So what is your strategy in Sweden?
Hello, Licia. Hello, everybody. Thank you. Yes, our strategy has been, well, in Sweden, actually at the governmental level, it's a country that is very decentralized. So all authorities and agencies are autonomous. And so in order to do things, it's very important to gather the right people and to make a lot of anchoring. So in Sweden, we have actually succeeded and managed to centralize a lot of processes in education and higher education. So, and this is a work that's been going on for a long time. So in Sweden, all universities are connected to our common federation, SWAMID, that is connected to Edugain. And we have also a central system that is called LADOC, where all results and credentials are stored. And it's owned by all universities. There's 37 of them through a consortium. So all this centralized system have actually given us, and we have also, of course, our EduID identity that we have since around 7 years. We've been developing it, and it's getting more and more centralized during the entire process of education. So we're working together with the agency for the National Agency for Education that has the primary and high school. That are going to introduce EduID in their sector, and also with the government agency for higher education that does the admission process. So it's the agency that handles the process between the high school and university. They are also the ones that handle a lot of the Erasmus process. And then in universities, our EduID is mostly used for switching to a local university identity. So if you study at one university and you have an EduID, you get your local account and identity through your EduID. And if you start do courses or switch to another university, you can use the same EduID, because EduID has a unique identifier. So we see as a very good starting point to doing our ESI soon. So that's has been our strategy here. So we are working with the universities now to develop EduID, so they don't have to actually need a local IT account process or a local identity in each university, because it's very costly for each university. So we're working through the entire educational process with our identity, and that's the idea. So you can have the EduID, your identity, its student identity, through the entire educational process from start to alumni also. Because now, if you you get a local university account, that will be switched off as soon as you stop studies in that university. And that's also another problem that we're trying to address, because university will like to have the alumni organization still close to the university. So that's our strategy.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting. And actually the EduID question came up also yesterday, and we will, I mean, certainly we will look into this from, say, MyAcademicID side will look about that. So it seems to me that where there is a stronger collaboration between universities and the national federations, things are easier. So maybe this is probably something to look at. And I see that David is smiling, and maybe you can say something. I mean, we have a good success case here with Bologna, but there are also, yesterday there were art schools and conservatorium where clearly they are smaller, so different challenges.
Yeah, exactly, Licia. You nailed it. That's exactly our problem, and well, or at least the challenge in this case. So yeah, in the case of the universities, I don't really see a problem in supporting the ESI. As the IDEM Federation, we started working with the University of Bologna and with Sergio to support them in, for example, we so far the SHAC personal unique code was not used basically in the IDEM Identity Federation, so we added it to our list of supported attributes, and we modified the attribute filter that was done a few days ago because Sergio signaled that. And that's it. So it's not really a problem with the universities. And also we have a tight relationship with them as the consortium GAR, which is, as you know, the federation operator of the IDEM Federation. There is a challenge, though, with the Art Academy and the Musical Academy and the galaxy of very small and not so small institution of secondary education that are also participating to the Erasmus project, Erasmus Plus project, because they are not, at this point in time, they're not part of the consortium GAR. They're not connecting to the GAR network. We don't even know them. So luckily enough, in Italy, we do have an agency that is managing the Erasmus Plus project. It's called Indire. And they are very aware about the MyAcademicID project. And just recently, we started working with them to find out what is the best solution to support all the institutions that currently would not be able to leverage an identity provider published to Edugain through the EDEN Federation to access the Erasmus without paper services. And once for all is the OLA, obviously. So this is a work in progress. We started very recently, and we will proceed with this dual strategy. On the one hand, we have the universities and most of the art academies and music academies that will probably, I mean, they do have the chance to join the consortium GAR and the EDEN Federation. It's not, some of them are already part of the GAR consortium, so they just have to be part of the identity federation. And for all the other institutions, the very small one also, we are working with the Indire agency to find if we just start, I mean, a conversation with the Indire agency to find a solution to support them.
This is certainly great to hear. I'm checking the chat for questions that are specific to this. So, Davide, you are aware that yesterday, I mean, I don't know if the same people as yesterday they are here. I basically asked all of them to contact you, and I don't know, maybe you have received emails already, or you will be receiving emails?
Not yet, but I'll be happy to.
Yeah, that's good to hear. So thanks for that. Then I don't see any new questions in the chat. So I think I would like to just give the floor once more to all of you for any last thought you may have. So I will start with Fresha. Do you have any last thoughts or suggestions that could be useful for others that are starting entering this space?
Yes, I would say think through the processes that will be affected by new processes here in because sometimes it comes a new thing. We have Erasmus, and very important, but then how would that affect the national processes for the national setup in the education system? So I would say think that through and map it out and gather the right people and the right agencies that are connected to these issues and questions. Yes.
Thank you. Vittoriano, any piece of advice from your side, being involved for a long time with Erasmus and actually in many other activities, including SHAC?
Well, I would say that we have a great opportunity to help the mobility of the data of people in the higher education space with the persons those data belong to. Because for many time we've been fighting privacy, personal information, and all these things, and trying to keep data, not to send more data that is really needed. But I think that at the same time we have been not helping the users in the movement of their data when they need to do that. So I think that we have a very good opportunity with this identifier to help the processes of moving data around connected to the person that data belongs to in a privacy preserving way, and in a way that will help to establish a good space for the higher education, especially in Europe. And maybe we can show how it can be properly done to the rest of the world. So I think it's a great opportunity. So please, all of you, help anyone around you to connect to this infrastructure and to provide this very simple identifier that we are needing at the moment. And I think that the time has come. So I think we might succeed in helping this to happen.
Thank you, Vittoriano. Sergio, any last thoughts from you?
I agree with Vittoriano. ESI code it is a very good opportunity to help students in the whole process of mobility. So we have to work hard, and we have to make in the right privacy context, but to use such data to make easier for students, and also for our institution, for our administrative office that needs help to make all the formal act more simple to be produced, to be compliant with the rules of Erasmus without paper. So it is a very good opportunity. It's a very good advance for the mobility. The ESIs, I hope it will be very useful. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergio. If nobody else has any questions or comments, looking also at the other colleagues that are there, Miro, for instance, or David and Leif. No? Then I think everybody has deserved a nice coffee break, and we will be back in 30 minutes, so at 12 o'clock, with the final...
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, Rita.
Yes,
if perhaps I can clarify one of the questions of my colleague that also interests me, Antonio Feliciani, because in our question is if we have students that make a part of its degree, the first level degree, for example, in Greece, and has this is sending institution and has a specific ESI of their Greece institution. Then it moves for the second level degree in Finland, and as Finland University give him another account with another ESI code. So this student has may happen that the student has a credential give for the Greece institution, and then another a credential of the Finland institution. And when he goes into the aula, there is the registration process with these two ESI, these two credentials, these two ESI are linked together. And we are, our question is, the aula MyAcademicID will provide us during the exchange of data information that this student has two different credentials and two different ESI registered in the MyAcademicID system. I think this is a question for Christos.
Yeah, I think we will, yeah, Christos, are you there?
I am here, but I'm not sure I completely understood the question, to be honest. So if you can repeat, perhaps, so I'm not sure I got exactly what the question was.
If a student has two credentials, or for because he he followed two different academic courses in two different academic institutions. Perhaps it will have two credentials, one of the Greece university, and one of the Finland university, for example. And each IDP will send an ESI that is specific to this institution, but it is always related to the same student, because it is the same student that can log into the Ola with the two different ESI. Because yesterday I decided to log in with the Greece account, and then I decide to use my Finland account. So in the MyAcademicID, you have a link of these two codes, because you told us that there is a sort of registration phase in which you link the different code. But when this student comes in Bologna, for example, for doing an Erasmus mobility, you will send us in the data about his mobility. You will send us only one ESI, or both the ESI that the student has that you have in your proxy.
So this is a very good question. So first of all, let me very quickly say two things. One, we designed the ESI with the concept that it will have multiple values. So throughout the academic life of a student, the student might and will acquire multiple ESIs, both because of the case that actually they go from one institution to the other, but also we had this idea that in the future, perhaps the ESI format even might change. We don't know what technological changes might happen in the next 10 years from now. So by design, the ESI is a multi-value attribute for the student. Now, if the student decides to link the identities of University of Bologna and University of Thessaloniki together, both ESIs will be available. So, and one capability that we have from the MyAcademicID platform is to be able to ask the student when they go to University of, let's say, Barcelona, to select which ESI they want to release, if so. I'm saying this as a technical capability. We haven't gone through the exact use cases of multi-ESIs and whether we should release all of them or some of them. Technically, we have all the capabilities built into the platform, but we really need also to mature our use case and understand how ESIs are going to be used. Also, let me make another statement here, because we do mention many times about releasing the ESI here, there. We are also conscious about the privacy aspect of the ESI, and part of the analysis in MyAcademicID and continuous in ESI is also to which services the ESI is absolutely necessary. For sure, it is not necessary for the student to go to the cafeteria and get a discount, right? So, having said this, the answer is yes to your question, basically, to have already taken this into account.
So can I add?
Very clear. Thank you.
I'll add something there from like our perspective in Sweden. Like, this is one of the reasons why, sort of, if you sort of recall what Teresa was saying, that we had looked at the processes that are in effect in our country and came to the conclusion that probably, right, ESI is a national thing in Sweden rather than an institutional thing, at least for the most part, right? Because, you know, we have a university system that permits a lot of movement between institutions, where that is even encouraged. So it kind of makes sense for us not to lock an ESI to a single institution. That might not be true for all countries, right? That's the whole point of this system, that it affords a large degree of freedom within the participating member states and institutions to sort of arrange the ESI structure as they sort of, that fits the process. But that's sort of the key word here. Figure out what the process looks like and build the structure of your identifiers to that.
Yeah, if I can chime in, so stealing some time from the coffee break, but I think also it's great that ESI lets use both scheme, the institution-based one and the national one, because if in the future in Italy we will have the same sensibility, which I have to say that for now we don't, unfortunately, maybe we will be able to add a national ESI as well. And that would not be a problem for Bologna, for example, because they will have someone, hopefully, at the MyAcademicID side that will help linking the two ESI with just one student.
Okay, I said coffee break, but another question came in really on the last second. So let's answer to this one. MyAcademicID is now used for all PhD hub. Will it be possible to make use of this service as a higher education institution for the registration of incoming exchange students? The Bologna use case. Christos, do you want to take that or?
So yes. First of all, by using EdGain as one of the foundations for MyAcademicID platform, effectively all higher education institutions who are connected to the National Federation EdGain have this capability. So this is built in by default. But let me again be a bit forward-looking and take it a step further by using also the eIDAS bridge, the ability to log in with eIDAS, and I want to stress this again, we now have new opportunities, and the new opportunities means that actually we can start a life cycle of managing the identity of the student by having the student enrolling with a national eID. And this is something that I think is one of the strong potentials of the MyAcademicID platform, using the eIDAS gateway to allow higher education institutions to onboard the students with a national ID, which will, as I said before, will close the circle. Basically, from that point on, the user student will be able to use the national ID, not only to access governmental services, but also to access academic services and have the academic attributes transferred automatically. We have a long way to go there, but we are already building the foundation for making this happen.
Okay, thank you. And it's a wrap now. Let's not go more into the coffee break. So we'll be back at 12. Thank you, everybody, for being here for the panel, and thank you, everybody, for the questions. So last session coming up to tell you what's going to happen next. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Thanks for staying with us till the last part of this online conference. Now, I have tried to practice to pronounce the name of Harpa, but I'm not sure I will do her. I will do her justice. So we are going really to tell you a little bit more about what will happen next. As you have heard over the 2 days, MyAcademicID project is ending, so it's really the final days for us, but it's not an end for us, it's really a start. Work will continue, and actually there have been very nice suggestions also from the chat on things that we will consider for sure. So Harpa, Joao, are you there? Ready?
Yes, I'm here.
So the next speaker is Harpa, I'll try, Sif Arnaldsdottir, Policy
Yes,
Officer at DG EC, and she will say more about European policy context for the European Student Card Initiative, followed by Joao Bacelar to wrap up and tell you a little bit more about the next step for MyAcademicID.
Yes, thank you so much for the introduction, Litzia. Now I don't know if I'm pronouncing your name right, but great job. So hello, everyone. Pleasure to be with you here today. I have to apologize. I'm coming to you live from my iPhone without any slides because I'm already in Iceland now in quarantine, trying to go back to my family for the holidays. So, okay, we're flexible and we make do with what we have. But indeed, I was asked to come here today to maybe put MyAcademicID project into a bit more of a political and policy context. And I like very much what you say, Litzia, that this project, this is a final conference, but in a way you could also say that this is a kickoff conference, because now we really start to roll out what you have developed and further scaling up these services and making sure that we really use what has been developed in the context of MyAcademicID to make the higher education system in Europe digitalized, more robust for the future, because whether we like it or not, the digital transformation of higher education is coming. And we need to prepare and come up with a plan and a strategy to do this collectively across Europe, so that we can also achieve the interoperability that is needed to make sure that the European higher education area, the European education area can be a true success. And we can have the level of cooperation that we want to have in the future. So in terms of the Commission priorities, as you should be well aware of now, the new MFF is, well, hopefully we will have an agreement on that soon. So of course, if we take a look at the macro level, the overall priorities of the Commission is, of course, to support the recovery of our societies from the COVID-19 pandemic, which is a huge challenge for us all. But beyond that, the green and digital transitions of our societies are also a key objective. And this has an impact on all sectors, so also higher education as well as society as a whole. And to make sure that we do this respecting fundamental rights of people in Europe, and we make sure that we do this in an inclusive manner so that nobody is left behind. So if we drill down, if you will, onto the higher education sector, we need to have a collective vision of what we want to do and how we will get there. And of course, digital and green transitions of the European higher education sector is a huge undertaking. And it will take many years to achieve what we want to achieve. But already we have started to laying the foundations for this transition. So just to point out that on September 30th, the Commission launched a series of communications that start to lay the foundations for what we want to do, outlining the key objectives. So on September 30th, you will be able to see the communications on the European education area, the European research area, and of course, the Digital Education Action Plan. And you will see there that the European Student Card Initiative is mentioned and prominently featured, because it does lay the foundations for some of the mechanisms that we have to have in place to make sure that we can achieve our objectives. And then beyond this, on November 19th, we had the Bologna Ministerial Conference and the Rome Communique adopted, which further reinforces these key objectives of what we want to achieve, in particular focusing on the next 10 years or so in higher education. And there you will see that the interoperability of IT systems in higher education is a key objective. And it mentions also that we have to do this building on the lessons learned and what has been developed in the context of the European Student Card Initiative. So we have sort of a political agreement and a very strong mandate, if you will, to further work on the European Student Card Initiative and rolling this out to all higher education institutions in Europe, and make sure that all students studying in Europe can benefit from the opportunities that this interoperability has. So these are sort of the overall policy objectives, but getting there requires, of course, funding, support, and work programs concretely to achieve this. And this is what the future programs will do. So you will have seen that we reached a political agreement on the new Erasmus Plus program a few days ago. And this program is really tailored to supporting this vision. Of course, we still need the final agreement on the MFF. So it's still some weeks to come before we have the program officially out. But it's important to bear in mind that the new program is really focused on supporting more mobility and doing so in a smart way, where we also have digital administrative processes that really make participation as easy and user-friendly as possible, both for the institutions that are participating, but also the students. So beyond this as well, we also have novelties like blended mobility and providing support for projects that are developing new innovative curricula and more ways for universities to cooperate online to really enrich the course offerings that they have. And in courses, making sure that students and staff can also work together online to have sort of a challenge-based, transdisciplinary and transnational approaches to education. But of course, we cannot, achieve this overnight. This is something that really requires then IT systems being interoperable and able to facilitate simpler administrative processes and more cooperation between institutions. So this is really where the European Student Card Initiative comes to play, as well as the MyAcademicID project, which has now blueprinted solutions to achieve this, really building bridges between existing solutions and a way for all higher education institutions to implement solutions. So in that respect, I simply want to say thank you to everyone who's been involved in this very impressive and important project. And I'm very happy that now the work will continue to further develop these solutions and further support the rollout of these solutions. So DG EAC, the Directorate General for Education, Youth, Sport and Culture, will continue to provide support for this initiative in the next program. And then also the colleagues from DG Connect that I think were here with you yesterday also will continue to fund important projects to further scale up and develop the solutions of MyAcademicID. And I believe that the colleagues will present to you what's going to happen next for this project after me. But in terms of digital administrative procedures, now the higher education institutions that are listening today will soon be awarded a new charter for the new program. And there, these institutions have committed to implementing digital mobility management in line with the standards that are being developed in the context of the European Student Card Initiative. So concretely, what that means is that step by step in the new program, institutions, EDGE holders will be expected to start implementing these new processes. And this means as well connecting to EduGain, if this is possible for that institution, and also issuing the ESI so that we make sure that the systems are interoperable and secure. So this is something that now we are finalizing roadmaps to achieve this step-by-step transition. We are working closely with digital officers in all of the program countries, both the national agencies as well as in ministries, to make sure that we understand where we are, how much time is needed to implement things in the national context. It's very important to us to make sure that we do this collectively and in a manner where we don't leave any institutions behind. So this is something that we have made a lot of progress recently, both with the digital officers and finding what are the appropriate solutions at the national level. I think that this is something that came up during this conference when the colleagues earlier were speaking, that it's very important to find the appropriate solution in the national context and to have a dialogue at the national level as well. So it's not totally up to the European level to define what is the best way of implementing this, but at the European level, we have to define the common standards to assure interoperability. But then at the national as well as institutional level, you have to define what is the appropriate solution and strategies for you to make sure that your students and your institutions can benefit from these solutions. But also making sure that the higher education institutions that have their own IT systems and commercial providers that are working in Europe, we are also working very closely with them to make sure that they understand what will be needed for the new Erasmus program, and that the systems are fit for purpose and they will be able to also implement things on time. So this is something that we are working now. I think 2021 in many aspects is going to be a year of transition, not just in terms of implementing the new Erasmus program and the new novelties, but also in terms of returning to normality. I think even before we start, implementing the new program, it's also about, making sure that mobilities can continue and universities are able to return back to their normal ways of working. Also, building on the lessons learned from this strange period that we are in. So I think that we will also be able to implement these solutions that we have and lessons learned in the new program to make sure that we also use online cooperation and blended mobility, etc., to further enrich higher education in Europe and reach out to a broader range of students and staff. And then beyond, implementing the new program in a transitional manner, recovering from COVID-19, we're also going to be in the transition phase for digital transformations. So I think from the Commission side, our key message is that things will not happen overnight. We are working together with you and with the national agencies and national authorities to make sure that things are progressing well and we're not creating problems for institutions. So even though as part of the EDGE, you are committed to implement all of this, we of course want to work with you. And if you run into problems, to let your national agency and national authority know so that we can take that feedback into account and fine-tune further our approaches. Like Licia said here before, it's very important, all of the feedback that you provide us. This is an evolving project, and the roadmap for implementing this is also something that is evolving. So your feedback is very important to us. So I think that in terms of key messages here today, before I give the floor to the next speaker, is that the MyAcademicID project and the follow-up projects that are starting now, they are not just about enabling digital mobility management of Erasmus+. They are also about laying the foundations for the digital transformation of higher education, and making sure that beyond Erasmus+, we enable much more cooperation between institutions for the future, and also ensure that students that are being mobile for whatever reason, not just in Erasmus+, but beyond Erasmus+, have an easy way of accessing services online and being mobile within Europe and really benefiting from the European education area, where we want to have much higher levels of mobility and reducing all of the administrative barriers for cooperation in higher education. So in terms of the next steps for higher education institutions, in the context of Erasmus Plus, there will be the new online learning agreement transitioning to a new template and these new mechanisms in the coming months. So that's something that we will keep digital officers and universities informed about. Also interinstitutional agreements. This is something that will start early 2021. We expect that you will be able to renew your agreements digitally. And also the Erasmus Plus mobile app. This is something that we are in the final stages of developing, and we expect there to be a formal launch of the new app in January. And this app also makes use of the services that have been developed in the context of MyAcademicID to make sure that students can have a true single online entry point to the program and all of the services and administrative processes that they need to undertake a mobility and to do so successfully and in a way where they have, you know, the most high quality enriching experience that they can have, because ultimately that is what this is about. The IT developments and the interoperability of the IT systems are important, not because we want them to be interoperable, but because what that offers us is possibilities to reach out to more students and make sure that universities in Europe are really able to equip students with the forward-looking skills that they will need to thrive in the future society and, you know, in this changing society that we are living in right now. So I think that that's it for me. Just to put this important project in context, I think that I'm not going to touch upon any technical specific things. That I think this has already been covered by this conference. But to say I greatly, and the Commission greatly looks forward to continuing this cooperation, continuing these developments, and really making sure that we use this opportunity. Also, I think somebody mentioned it before us, to really show that Europe can show how this can be achieved, and maybe can set some good quality standards for the rest of the world in regards to cooperation in higher education. So that's it for me. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Harpa. It's nice to see that there is a lot happening and planned for next year. And thank you for joining from Iceland with a mobile phone. Great connectivity, by the way. I will not say you were on a mobile phone. So thank you very much for that. And well, hopefully your quarantine is about to end. João, you are the last one.
So sorry to keep you waiting. I'm fiddling with my settings, but I think I figured out the audio, which makes me very proud. And hopefully in a second, you should be able to see my screen. Voila. Is it working properly, Licia? Can I get a thumbs up? Excellent. So thank you. Well, thank you everyone really for sticking around for the second day of the conference. Warm thanks to Harpa for the very kind words. Actually, I have to start with a bit of a confession. So I was given the slot to literally close the conference and to, with it, to some extent, close the project as well. I think I said it yesterday in the opening already, but it's not too much to say that it's been a pleasure and an honor for the UF to lead this project. First and foremost, because it's been an outstanding team effort. There's been a lot of hard work. It's been a very long 2 years, but when you have colleagues that are so professional and so enthusiastic, a lot of the hard work actually becomes a little bit easier. So I think I speak on behalf of all of our team and to some extent the project team to say that we've relished taking this challenge. And as Arpa said, we hope that this sets the stage for a few years to come in terms of building basic digital infrastructure. Now, if I only add one slide to share with you today, I think that would be it, or this would be it. Okay. So I suspect by what I read in the comment box that many of the colleagues that are with us today are international officers. And I understand that for those that fit that description, some of the technical stuff that we must talk about might not be easy to grasp, but take this message and share it with your colleagues. As we go digital, mobility necessarily implies taking a certain degree of care about the identification of the students that we work with and that we try to support and that we try to open new horizons for. And this is also not just a cultural change vis-a-vis, what happened in the last 30-something years, but it's also in some cases maybe a small change of processes, of adjustments. I think we were very encouraged to hear that colleagues such as Sergio in Bologna managed to get this up and running in very few days, and we've heard the same about other universities. We do understand that this is not the case for everyone, and we're very committed to make sure that, that we go out of our way to support all the higher education institutions and being a part of this ecosystem. And this brings me directly into the question of what is the future? And as Arpa mentioned, as Thomas mentioned, as we mentioned in several occasions, the future is that the work that was started with MyAcademicID will be continued under something called EDSSI, which is a new CEF project. It's probably one of the last CEF projects because this funding line is going to be renamed. And this stands for European Digital Student Service Infrastructure. Now, you will have the opportunity to get acquainted with this project in the weeks and the months ahead. We typically like to talk about things when we have results to show for. And EDSSI is still a little bit of a baby. So I will give you a sneak peek into it and what is the focus, the architecture, what are the ambition behind it. But I'm not going to go too much into details because I think for most of the colleagues attending, what is really important for you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is not what project comes next. At some point, it becomes tiresome to keep track of acronyms and different places where to look for information, but it's rather to give you some more concrete detail and to zoom in and out of the big picture. So the first thing you need to know is that, as the colleagues from DG Connect mentioned yesterday, EDSSI is kind of the graduation ceremony for MyAcademicID. It's a project becoming a new core service at the EU level. So there is a lot of responsibility that comes with this that we've gladly taken on. And I should point out that this is a project that is going to be led by our friends and our colleagues at the Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. In fact, it's already led because it already started last October. And to give you, a broad overview of what is it that we're dealing with here, there are essentially three things. The first factor is to ensure that the proxy, the infrastructure, the IDAS bridge, all of that was developed can remain available. And this might sound a bit obvious, but for those of you that have experience with the European Student Card, you might know that this is not always something that is easy to, to be sure about. There have been Erasmus Plus projects that started at a little hiatus, then they started again. And so we're very thankful for DG Connect for doing everything in their power with the support of DGAC, of course, to make sure there is continuity in terms of the availability of the infrastructure. Practically speaking, what this means is that nothing of what we've presented here today is going to go out of the window. I know that this is a concern for some of you. Oh, we might start implementing something and then it stops working. There will be no such issues as far as we can tell. And we do encourage you to engage because even if this is a long-term process, time is of essence, as I will try to stress in my later slides. Now, EDSSI is divided into two broad hemispheres. The first one focuses on mobility, continues the work that we already started. Obviously, we're not going to redo things that are deliverables of the MyAcademicID project. And so what I mean by implementing ESI in EWP, the main focus there is to make sure that the network that we use for data exchange incorporates the SI and as Sergio mentioned in his presentation, starts taking advantage of the opportunities it offers. It's going to be a process, but it's a process that is already underway, and keep your eyes peeled, because in the first days of 2021, we will already have some deliverables in this respect, and I will flag them towards the end of the presentation. But there is a second hemisphere, which is as important and perhaps even more in some cases, which has to do with embedding ESI to enable student services. And as much work is going to go into this component of the project, we will be working with the colleagues from the CNUS in France, the Deutsche Studentenwerk in Germany, and DISO in Italy, to make sure that student services are well represented, and there will be others that will be involved as well from other countries through what we call a business process owners forum. What we're doing here, concretely speaking, is setting the stage to make it possible that for those of you that will find it easier to translate this in the Erasmus language, like myself, to be honest, that, for example, we can start taking steps that mitigate issues like accommodation, which is an increasingly big obstacle when it comes to going abroad. So things like simple ability to not just secure the spot for a dorm, but even to get the contract signed before arrival when that is desirable, so that students have a little bit more, assurance when they take steps to go abroad. So this is what the next 2 years, 2 years and a half will be our main focus. And there are lots of small and very specific deliverables that are part of EDSSI as well. They range from ensuring the maintenance of the European Student Card router, which is at the center of the current European Student Card facility and infrastructure. There is a question of preparing documentation that can accelerate the adoption of this infrastructure. The question of the governance, which a colleague mentioned in the chat, and that is very pertinent, is also being addressed through EDSSI. And there is many others, to be honest. So this would make for a very long list. I'm just trying to give you a sense of what is it that we'll be concretely dealing with. Now, knowing what the future looks like in terms of the work and the structures that will allow us to channel our energies, I think it's also fair to talk a little bit about challenges. And challenge number one, yes, is really what I mentioned earlier, the ability to make sure that no higher education institution is left behind. For us, this is, I think for everybody, Arpa mentioned it already, but it's something that we take very seriously, because the UF is a network of 70 universities from all over Europe, all kinds of sizes and very different profiles. So, and what I mean by support is actually many things. It's the ability to run an help desk so that questions can be adequately answered. There is some capability to do so in the context of the new project, but this is a question that is bigger than an individual project. And I think we've seen how important that is yesterday and today, not least because I also saw colleagues in the chat asking questions about DLA or other tools that are a little bit out of scope of today's conference, but we understand are important for you to be able to prepare your next steps and to transition to the new program. The support is also something that we've talked about several times during this conference, which is the notion that if there are institutions that cannot be part of their national federations for reasons that we need to discuss in a little bit more detail, that we make sure that they can still grant access to their students to the digital tools of the program. And so we understand this to be a critical success factor. I think it will still mean a lot of work, but the good news is that there's a very strong and a very committed community, starting with the colleagues at the European Commission, the digital officers, project partners, other digital champions throughout the program constellation that will do everything in their power to ensure this. Now, a second challenge is, and this was, I could have built the slides, and I did to some extent as the discussion progressed today. The notion that there are use cases that we can venture into, that we can leverage on what we've built. DSI is a recurrent topic in these discussions. I'm not going to expand very much because I think some of the colleagues in the panel already did a very good job of touching upon this. There's the question of the registration of students using EIDAS, which I think is something that as a community we need to strive for, try to get there as quickly as possible, because it ensures that when we issue academic credentials, they stand on a very solid ground. I mentioned the example of the student services. I'm not going to go back. Yarum mentioned the question of personalization of the services, the ability for them to be context sensitive. There are the new mobility types that will be part of the next program that Arpa mentioned, blended, short. And then there are things like European University Alliances that oftentimes are working on questions of curricular development, joint curricular development and delivery, oftentimes online. And we know there is a huge potential to leverage on this work to enable those use cases. Now, I do have to say that there is more to this process than just making a list of use cases and start releasing attributes like that. We do have to apply some due diligence to study them in detail, to understand what is really required. These processes, if done, in an intellectually honest way, they will take some time and energy. But what is important is to understand that as we speak today, and as we gave you the examples in the demo, we are probably scratching the surface. There is a lot we can do, and being aware of that I think makes it very exciting for us to continue working on these topics. And my third challenge draws from all of the discussions and the Q&As that we've had over the last 2 days. And that is what you need to plan for and to make sure that our education institutions have maximum clarity in terms of knowing what are the next steps. So obviously, I'm not going to talk about a new program. Arpa is the expert on that. But as far as the deployment of this kind of infrastructure is concerned, I've tried to summarize a little bit things that have been said throughout the conference. So I'll start with 2 very important EWP use cases: the question of universities that have their own IT systems, and the question of universities that rely on third-party providers for their mobility systems. Now, an important question and a very understandable question is, do I need to use my academic ID for authentication purposes? And the answer is no. Surely, if you have this kind of systems, you already have an IDP that allows the management of the identities of who has accesses and the respective authorization. So this is not something that you should worry, but what you should keep an eye on is on the ESI specifications as they trickle down into the EWP spec. I mentioned a few minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, that in the context of the DSSI project, there is work underway on the EWP APIs. And all the universities that are in these use cases, they rely on the APIs to exchange data. And so those are being updated for the next program, and you will see that the SI will start featuring on a step-by-step basis. So it's important that you are equipped so that even if your students might not be interacting with this infrastructure themselves, that the data exchange processes can be compliant and correct. There's not much more to this. Obviously, we're not going to discuss about ESIs in the context of the interinstitutional agreements. So this is rather a question for learning agreements and nominations, which will come later in 2021 if all goes according to plan. And then we've had a lot of questions, and rightly so, about the question of the OLA. How do students, actually we left some questions in the chat somewhat deliberately because we thought, okay, let's try to cover them in one go. And so as of now, you probably have realized that there are 3 ways to enter the OLA. The first one is with EduGain, and that's the one we are advertising and encouraging everyone to choose when possible. And here I just pick up on what Chris has mentioned yesterday, the EduGain configuration. There will be adjustments so that there is a baseline for attributes released from March 2021. Happy to discuss the details. I don't think Licia will allow me to carry on for much longer, so I'll just put it out there. This is not relevant for international officers, in my understanding. This is relevant for the people in your institution that handle identity management, so one of the technical teams that you work with. And then the SI becomes an attribute to be released in EduGain, hopefully from August 2021. Now, we also have the option to walk, not literally, but to access TLA with the EIDAS. That is going to be maintained for the foreseeable future. The key there really is the account linking. Chris has already talked about that, so I leave it as it is. We need this account linking to extract the academic attributes that are not necessarily part of the IDA schema. And there is some work as well from our side to take full advantage of the potential of combining these two infrastructures. And then, of course, the more popular question is, what's with Google? What happens? How can you use it, et cetera, et cetera. And I just wanted to make 2 or 3 points on this, which I think are very important. Point number 1, as Jerem has said, this is a transition. As operator of the infrastructure, we are not really keen to use Google for any longer than what is strictly required, because it has a number of limitations. And to be honest, it also triggers some privacy concerns. It's not an ideal solution. It's there because it is a plug gap. Now, when the new LA was launched in mid-October, we mentioned that our goal was to discontinue the Google logins by the first quarter of 2021. But after discussing with our colleagues, discussing with the Commission, we realized that's not possible. But we're still strongly motivated to take the next step. And this is very much to be confirmed, but we hope that this can happen towards the end of the summer in 2021. The to be confirmed is incredibly important, because we cannot take the Google away unless we provide you an alternative in case you cannot use the 2 above. And so this is part of the work we're doing in EDSSI. This is something that we will be asking the support of the European Commission to make sure that happens within the shortest period of time possible. But there are both technical and usability reasons why we would like this to happen as soon as possible. So this is a topic that we're not going to exhaust in this presentation or in this conference. Rather, I will start wrapping up my presentation with the last slide, which is what I tend to tell colleagues when they ask me, okay, so what do I do? I'm a little bit lost. What are the key steps? And so I'm not talking now for the technical experts. They know much better than I do how they release the SI in their local systems. Victoriano, Sergio, and others, they're the experts in those questions. But for everyone that tries to grasp the essence of the process, what I'll tell you is, number 1, join your national federation. This is definitely the best way to do this. We already have a critical mass of universities in Europe that are part of their national federations. Universities and higher education institutions, I think around 3,700, give or take. The colleagues from Jean will forgive me if I'm quoting the wrong numbers, but I think I'm not far off. And so, as it was discussed in the panel, we have a number of institutions, smaller or for other reasons, that are not yet part of this infrastructure. And please investigate how you can become part of it. And if there's something that is specific to your country that prevents this from happening, do discuss the matter with your national authorities, with your digital officers, so that country by country we can make sure that there's a welcoming structure to you. The second step is that once you're in the federation, join EduGain. So this is where we have this huge critical mass of institutions. And the third step is release the SI through EduGain. The SI is not something that, hopefully your students will not have to memorize their ESI. Hopefully the way this is done properly is that we use a transport layer that embeds this information in a safe way that the electronic services can read and consume. Maybe there will be cases where this is not going to be possible for everyone during this kind of transition period, but we need to aim at this for usability reasons. And I think it's very encouraging, and that's literally my closing statement, that already almost 10% of the EduGain Federation has released the SI, has made it available to the community in what is an incredibly short period of time, a month and a half. So if we can do this much in such a short period of time, where we're all stressed because we have to deal with multiple emergencies in our services, I think that as a community, we should be able to do much more in the coming months, particularly the next 9 months or so that when the next program starts, the levels of readiness are as high as possible. So do it for your students, but do it also out of self-interest, because as other colleagues have mentioned, this will play a key role in making sure that the processes are smooth, that this is done once and you don't have to keep looking over your shoulder to see whether students can or cannot access. So I think in a nutshell, that's it from my side. Lucia, I'm terribly sorry for going a little bit over the time allowed to me. Thank you all again. Thank you to the colleagues that have been partners in the project, but especially thanks for the colleagues that have gave us the distinct pleasure of joining the conference today.
I think this was very good that you say that. I liked your 3 steps because it was something that people were asking about. Maybe there should be a step 0. People should get, IT department need to work to get the directories in order to be sure that users have electronic identities at their universities, and then once that is in order, everything comes from there, I would say. But we do know that, that there will be differences depending on the universities, on the countries. As I said, this is just the beginning, so we are not expecting to have everything working from day 0 effectively. Actually, I have to say I'm already very impressed by the amount of numbers that Christos showed yesterday in the slides, given COVID, given that everything is new. So I think we are doing pretty well, if I say so myself. So there is a question here, about the release of the ESI. Will this be automatic through the EduGain network so that higher education institutions don't need to do anything extra towards this? Or does the institution need to do something to release it? Don't be sorry, Katia, I know it's confusing. So actually the whole purpose of this conference was to try and highlight these things. Does somebody in the panel, in the group here, want to take this question? Christos, you want to take that? Otherwise, I can also take that. Or Joao, you can take that.
Lucia, I think you might be the right person for this question. I don't mind chiming in, but
right. So as if actually, I really encourage everybody to look at the slides that Sergio, and we will share the slides, by the way, soon after the event. I'll collect everything in a shareable place in the cloud, so we don't have to transfer big data everywhere. So if you look at the presentation that Sergio made, you will see that there are some steps that are needed. You will need to, actually Sergio is also there, so maybe
yes.
you can address that even better than me.
For answering Katia, the problem in Shibboleth in the IDP, you have to configure something. For example, you have to configure the module that define and compute the ESI code, and then you have to configure the file that allows the attribute to be released to the service provider. So if my first step of development, this file was not updated, this attribute was not included in the ones managed by our IDEM Federation. And for this reason, it wasn't passed in EduGain. So we have to modify this, to update this configuration file to make sure that the attribute is released to the service, to the application. So I think that the best solution is to talk with the federation, with every national federation, to work together and to verify that all is working correctly.
Actually, I think we should probably elaborate on this question more, maybe a step by step, depends also on the configuration that universities have at home. But Katia, thanks for asking this. We'll think of a way to provide more information on the MyAcademicID FAQ page, so that everybody can look at that and it's a bit more clear for everybody. So yeah, because I see that other people ask a good question, I was thinking the same. So we'll try to really pull together a little bit step by step how to release ESI that makes things easier for everybody.
Perhaps, Lucia, perhaps I can just say something. Let me start my video. So one part that is a bit confusing is because of the aspect that different teams within the higher education institutions need to come and work together to make this happen. It is not an exercise, something that can be achieved, for example, by only the department that deals with international transfers, or only with the management identity provider. So these folks, I mean, for me, what I would suggest is that you go talk to your IT department that is managing your identity provider, give them the information about what you need. If they read the documentation that we have on the MyAcademicID webpage, they will immediately understand the mechanism behind it and what they need to happen. The particular thing that is particular to each higher education institution is the transformation of the local identifier to the ESI, which can happen by putting the 3 elements that we talked about yesterday. And then your technical team can also get assistance from the National Federation Operator to make everything work. This requires some coordinated action between three entities, but if you reach out to your IT department, things will start rolling, and this can happen. As also we saw the case with University from Bologna, where basically they reach out the IT team and to the Federation Operator, which is IDEM, and within 10 days they were able basically to have this available for all the students.
Yes. I don't see any more questions in the chat, but I know you have a question, João, or a comment?
Not a question. I think the colleagues have already answered the last question. I just wanted to give a shout out to Quentin, which has been engaging with us in the Q&A, because he had a similar question. And I think my first question to him is, how are you looking at this? Are you looking at this from a technical implementation standpoint? In which case, what the colleagues just said should put him on the right path. If you're looking at this from the perspective of an IRO that is trying to understand what needs to happen, then I think what merits to be added is that once this is configured, once this is set up, this runs largely on its own with the kind of maintenance that all IT systems require, obviously, because there can be updates in the future. But this becomes, in my understanding, and I'll let the experts correct me if I'm wrong, this becomes really rather automatic. I think that the colleagues that raised the issue were maybe hinting at this. If they weren't, well, now we've covered it. It was just the point that set this up, have it running, go about doing the rest of the business that IROs are typically overwhelmed with, and presumably don't look over your shoulder too much. That's the beauty of it. Thank you, sorry.
No, actually, that's a good point. And as I said, I think we will assess a bit more the questions, because I think some of them can be further elaborated, for instance, in my academic website, in MyAcademicID website with FAQs or other things. There were also people that asked for leaflets, something that is more visual, that, you know, all this, of course, can be done, and we will think about that, absolutely. So in this, I don't think I have to add a lot. I think it was really great to manage within what is possible now, to still have interaction with you and to get a sense of where things are, what is not clear, what needs clarifying. And as Arpa said, we are not just trying to enable student mobility for the time being, but we are really trying to build this digital infrastructure, and this will take some time. As all things, it will require collaboration from all parties. There will be things that are confusing. Maybe in the process, we will all learn how to improve things, and we will refine things as we go along. Absolutely. And as last thing, I know you will get a questionnaire, very short, really. There are 3 questions we ask you to answer. We keep things short, but I still would like, if you allow me, and if you can bear with me only for 5 minutes, I would like to share my screen and ask you just really literally 2 questions here. And that's because we want to understand and we want to learn more from this experience. So let me check, present. Right, I hope you can see this. Yes, yeah, okay. So you can use, as usual, the QR code, or you can go to menti.com and type in the code. So pretty simple. I have to move a bit of windows here. Okay, I guess everybody's there. So let me ask you, were things clearer today? I had the impression that yesterday we gave you, in the aim to provide a big picture, we may have provided also some confusion. So we really would like to understand. I believe that Jeroen's presentation was very much on the case, and also we had universities tell us stories. I mean, there wasn't a lot of time, but I'm hoping that we have covered some gaps at least, and we do know that there is more work to be done and more to be covered. So I'll leave this here just for a couple of seconds longer. I don't want to stand between you and lunch. Okay, this is at least reassuring, because this was the idea. We know there is more, and we will think how to give you this more in a way that can address different audiences, because this is also part of the problem, as Joao indicated. So the last question, is there anything that you would like to tell us? You have used the Q&A, but if there is anything, last thought that you would like to add here, please feel free. And again, criticism, suggestions, improvement, anything, we are happy to assess what we have done. The idea was to get together. I think this has worked honestly very well. And I do wonder, if we had organized this in person, if we could have had so many people showing up. Also, logistically, would have been maybe more difficult to find the right venue to have 400 people. Maybe people would have had troubles to participate. So I'm very happy with this remote interaction. Thank you all. And yes, step-by-step guide, this has come up a lot, and we will work on that. It will not be ready tomorrow, not in a couple of weeks, not because those things, particularly when you do the guides, it takes time. It depends also who reads them, who writes them. We have to find the right balance, but we will work on that starting on January next year. So it will certainly be on the roadmap for us. Yeah, more technical info, absolutely. Yes, we also realized that. Yes, it's difficult to follow the entire process. Totally appreciate and understand, because also for us, while we were working on that, it took us many meetings that last very long. So. But I take, from this, the short guide is really something that we can look at, something more hands-on for people. So thank you so much. I will stop sharing now. Thank you very much to all speakers. Thanks from our friends from European Commissions that were here listening, presenting. Thanks to the whole MyAcademicID team, and it's, as I said, most of us will keep working together for the coming 2 years. And actually, it's funny because Joao said they were long 2 years, and I was thinking, actually, no, it felt very short for me, but yes. So I give the floor to all my other colleagues. Anything else you would like to add, please feel free to do that. And if not, thank you so much. You will receive an email with the links to the recordings, and I'll put the slides somewhere so you can download the slides. And also let you know where that somewhere will be. So thank you again, and I wish you a nice rest of the day.
Thank you.
Actually, if you put the video on for a second, maybe I can take just a screenshot, if you don't mind, for a PR material and other things. Okay, let me. Yes.
Oops.
Okay, ready? Smile. Okay. Thank you all.
Bye.
So, Merry Christmas and all the best. Stay safe. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.